As the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I want to echo the sentiments of all colleagues in this place, and also to the members of the Rastafarian community. Tafari, I'm sure he and I go way back, and I just saw him last week. And I'm seeing him again today as well. So we want to echo our sentiments and we appreciate them coming here for the full day and listening and again showing the support for what we're doing here today. Mr. Deputy, just before I get into the presentation, I just wanted to raise a couple of constituency matters, particularly after the member for Central and South, Eleuthera, spoke. Mr. Deputy, went to Sweetings Key this weekend, where we also had our independence celebrations. And once I got to Sweetings Key, as soon as I got off the boat, I was met with a number of constituents, and they wanted me to reinforce the need for the community dock. They also wanted me to also reinforce the need for repairs to their school. I also committed to them, one thing that was said during the event was, although it is better in the Bahamas, it is sweeter in Sweetings Key. And I told them I would make sure and say that in this place, because I agree with them how beautiful Sweetings Key is. But again, we have to reinforce the fact that we need to have that community dock in Sweetings Key. We also need to have the additional the work done, the repair work done on the school in Sweetings Key, as well as the seawall in Smith's Point. They are having some, again, rust, and it's the unfortunate decomposing of some of the issues on the seawall that really needs the Ministry of Works to look at repairing that. And look at what additional support that needs to happen, either some paint and so on that needs to happen with respect to that seawall in Smith's Point. And again, the seawall in High Rock, again, I understand that that's in the budget, and so we are hoping that that seawall in High Rock, as well as the seawall in Waterkey, I'm sorry, the dock in Waterkey. We also need that to also, the dock, we need a dock in Sweetings Key and a dock in Waterkey. And then we also need the seawall in High Rock and the repair of the seawall in Smith's Point. And so all of those, again, we have boating communities that, this isn't just a matter of something that's nice or aesthetic in their communities. These are things that are life, it's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of their income. It's a matter of their work. Most of them, the song comes to mind, I'm a boatman, I'm a seaman, my wake is on the water. so for all of them, that song really is true for all of them. So we are advocating for them, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I'm honored again to be the final speaker for those of us on this side. And again, I do not want to just repeat what was said, but all of those members on this side who gave their contributions made significant points. And all of them, I think those points need to be taken a look at, particularly the ones that were raised by the member for St. Barnabas, the member for St. Anne's, obviously the points also that was raised by our leader, the member for Marcos City, All of those points are very significant points. Mr. Deputy, there is no dispute that the world and the Caribbean have been moving in the direction to legalize medical cannabis. That's no dispute. Also, in the Bahamas, the commission that was started by the Free National Movement did a report in 2021. And in that report, the use of cannabis for medical use, it was found to have very strong support. In fact, it was 84% of Bahamians, or 84% of those who responded to the survey, supported the use of medical marijuana in the Bahamas. And so again, what we are doing here today, the government supports, the opposition supports, the people of the Bahamas support. So there's no question that we support the introduction of medical cannabis in the Bahamas. But, Mr. Deputy, this is not something that is being forced on us. There's no gun to our head that is saying that you must do this. And so what this does is it provides us with a great opportunity to determine for ourselves what this industry will look like in the Bahamas. You know, oftentimes when we bring legislation here, it is for a reason, or outside sources have forced this on us or influenced certain things on us. And so while we are independent and we have our own rights, there are external forces that are influencing what's happening here. But with respect to this new emerging industry, we have the ability to shape what this industry is going to look like in the Bahamas. So we're not Canada, we're not Jamaica, we're not the US, and we're not Barbados, we're not any other Caribbean country. We are the Bahamas. And so while we look at what is happening in the Caribbean, while we look at what's happening in the US, what's happening in Canada, they have different considerations. And so we have the ability to determine and carve out for ourselves what we want to see happen in this industry. We get to decide what type of country we want to live in. We get to decide what type of industry we want to shape. And that's something that we cannot take for granted, and that's not something that we just can automatically say, well, the US has this, or Jamaica has that, or Barbados has this. But we have to determine whether that's something that is right and fits for the Bahamas. So while, I respect what others have done, other countries have done, we must determine for ourselves what this industry is going to look like in the Bahamas. And we have to determine for ourselves and for our children what the industry, what the future of this industry is going to hold for our children. The FNM, I believe, took a methodical and evidence-based approach to the medical cannabis industry. We established the Bahamas National Commission on Marijuana. And the intention for us in establishing this was to codify the views of Bahamians on all things related to cannabis, also to make recommendations to the government on the positions related to the legal, social, medical, ceremonial issues as it relates to cannabis. So it, again, from the FNM's point of view, we were not just going to automatically create a cannabis industry, but it was important for us to get the public's view and get experts' view in terms of how this industry ought to be laid out in the Bahamas. The Commission reached out to many Bahamians, or as many Bahamians as possible, to garnish their views on the issue of cannabis. And they also assess the prevailing attitudes and opinions regarding policy and legislative changes. And they also monitored activities related to cannabis issues regionally and internationally. So in their report, they looked at what was happening in the Caribbean as well as they looked at what was happening internationally. And then they produced a final report in 2021 that offered practical recommendations from Bahamians with a uniqueness and culture of the Bahamas in mind. The report found that there was widespread support for legalization of cannabis for medical purposes. Again, as I said, it was above 80% support for legalization of cannabis for medical purposes. The report found that there was less support for a full-scale legalization of recreation or adult use, while most persons, again, with respect to the recreational use, there was not support, or there was not the majority support for legalization for recreational use. So the public had not, according to the report, the public had not gotten that far. There was also a little less support for, and this is from the medical purposes was high. Under the medical purposes was legalization for religious and ceremonial purposes, and then underneath the legalization for religious and ceremonial purposes was recreation support. There was strong support for changes to be made to the current legislation in these areas. But I will say that there was one of their recommendations in the report was for us to move forward with respect to medical cannabis, but the report also found that we should move forward with respect to the religious component of cannabis as well. And so while in terms of the public support, it was not as high in terms of the medical, the committee on the commission recommended that this was a process that we also proceed with as well. Now, this issue of ownership in the cannabis industry really has been talked about again on both sides. But again, this also speaks to what we would like to see happen in this industry. It is my personal view that there is really no need for any foreign ownership in the industry. There should be 100% ownership for Bahamians. The reality is Bahamians have been officially or unofficially owning and managing this industry for years in the Bahamas. And so, and I believe it was a member of the Rastafarian community who said this point, and I tend to agree with him, where he said, for many years, Bahamians had been prosecuted. And many young men, their lives have been destroyed with respect to this. And their point was they shouldn't have to pay a license fee or any funds that they got to pay for license fee. It should come back to them because of the reparations that they are owed for being prosecuted all the many years, all the many years. So I tend to agree with them on with respect to that point, but because I think it's a valid point that again which is being made now. I also made the point of when we were looking at the gambling legislation and legalizing gambling and so on, and again this issue came up as to who would be the persons who would be licensed for this. Well, the ironic thing was the people who were being licensed for it was the people who were already conducting business in that area in any event. And so if it was true for that industry, then I think we should also looking at the same with respect to this industry as well, because it would be a shame that for all of the years that this industry has caused challenges for particularly young black men, for all of the years that this has caused challenges for them, that when we decide to change it, those same young black men cannot get the full benefit from the changing of the industry. And so I think we need to look closely at that. If there are individuals who have these convictions or so on, I think we need to be able to carve out some exceptions for those type of industries, or expunge the record to be able to accommodate these young men. Also, Mr. Deputy, there are significant economic benefits for medical cannabis. One of the benefits would obviously be the income that you get from the fees and the taxes that it brings to the government. Another benefit would be the revenue that is earned from medical marijuana would free up individual economies from the huge debt burdens and reliance on high-interest loans from multilateral organizations that all, I believe, Caribbean countries are saddled with. Another economic benefit is the diversification is needed to ensure economies are not so heavily dependent upon one industry, and medical marijuana is now the third popular export from the Netherlands. So countries like Canada and the Czech Republic can also be an easy alternative. The Netherlands, for example, makes $3.2 billion every year, which means that the Dutch government pulls in more than $600 million in taxes from that industry. Again, I'm not suggesting that in the Bahamas we can have anywhere near that, but it just shows the potential when it comes to providing for the government and providing the necessary resources to the government. Also, a well-regulated medical marijuana program will create well-paying real jobs and, again, good tax-paying jobs for the country. One industry, and again, this was spoken about as well, which I support, is in looking at countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They are pioneers in cannabis export. So St. Vincent and Grenadines, they made history in 2022 by becoming the first Caribbean nation to export medical cannabis. And the country's commitment to strict regulations and high-quality standards have allowed it to gain international recognition and approval. If St. Vincent and Grenadines can look at exporting medical marijuana, there is no reason why we in the Bahamas, Bahamians in the Bahamas, cannot do the same. Also in Barbados, Barbados aims to position itself as the center of excellence for medical cannabis research, development, production, attracting investment and so on for driving economic growth. Again, if countries like Barbados can look at being the center for research in cannabis, there is no reason why the Bahamas also cannot position itself to also take advantage of these kinds of points as well. As well, Mr. Deputy, the Cannabis Authority provides us again with an opportunity for us to take the SOEs or the state-owned enterprises to a different level. And this is what I mean by that. One of the issues with SOEs that we on this side have been saying is that we would want a greater degree of accountability and transparency for the management of SOEs, which goes beyond just producing a report, an annual report, and that annual report being placed in Parliament or in the House. There has to be a heightened degree of accountability when it comes to managing SOEs. And with respect to the Cannabis Authority, if there ever was a case where you wanted a heightened degree of accountability and transparency, it would be with this. It would be with this authority. And providing a report to Parliament, unfortunately, I believe it needs to go beyond just providing a report to Parliament. One of the things that, and the example of how sometimes meaningless these, and although it's in the law, how easy it is for the government to ignore or not abide by the law. Just look at the example of the Section 76 of the Public Procurement Act. This government's Public Procurement Act, Section 76, which provides that a report, an annual report, is supposed to be tabled in the House of Assembly in July, the next sitting after the budget. But we've been here after the budget. We've been here a couple of times after the budget, and yet we still have not seen this annual report that ought to have been tabled that speaks about all of the contracts that the government has issued through the Public Procurement Act, and that is in the law, Section 76. And so, again, we need an even higher degree, an even heightened degree of accountability, because again, we see how easy it is to just simply ignore something like providing a report to Parliament. We also need to strengthen the accountability of the Cannabis Authority, where there should be considerations for quarterly management reports. And these quarterly management reports should be published on the website. Again, it adds a heightened degree of transparency, a heightened degree of accountability, where these things can also be put on and made public. Also, the Freedom of Information Act. If there ever was an SOE that was ripe and ideal for the Freedom of Information Act, it would be the Cannabis Authority. Because again, you want the public to be able to see what is happening in the authority and to be able to also scrutinize what's happening with the authority. So while we again 100% support the authority, and our bill also had similar provisions, but what we are saying is this authority is ripe. It is ideal for a heightened degree of scrutiny. It is ideal for a heightened degree of accountability, and that's one point that we think the government should also take a look at. And again, the question is, what type of industry do we want to see in the Bahamas? And that is one point that we would like to see happen in the Bahamas. Also, Mr. Deputy, the concerns that was raised by the member for St. Barnabas, the concerns of pharmacists, the Pharmacists Council, Pharmacists Association. I believe those concerns were raised by them. And again, it speaks to what we would like to see happen in this industry in the Bahamas. Do we want to see an industry that has a stricter view, or do we want an industry that has a more liberal view? A stricter view would be only doctors would be the ones who prescribed the cannabis or medical cannabis, and only pharmacists would be the ones that would be able to dispense medical cannabis. And again, that concept is not a foreign concept. That concept is one, and if you look at places like New York, if you look at places like Minnesota, Connecticut, those are states where in order to dispense medical cannabis, you have to be a pharmacist. In fact, one of these states, you have to actually, the pharmacist owns the facility, owns and runs the facility. Some are a little bit more liberal, where you have to be in the building. So in order for you to dispense, a pharmacist has to be present in the building in order for you to be able to dispense. So again, these are things that, yes, we can look at other jurisdictions, but we have to ask ourselves the question, what do we want to see in the Bahamas? Do we want to see other folks other persons being able to dispense it who are not pharmacists? Do we want other folks to be able to prescribe it who are not doctors? So this again is a question that we in the Bahamas must answer for ourselves, as to see what type of industry would we like to see happen in the Bahamas. With respect to fixed penalty offenses, Mr. Deputy, again, we 100% support this in terms of decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana. It is something that I've supported for many years, representing folks for, it's probably been now about 25 years, more than 25 years now, in representing folks young men particularly, who have been caught in these situations. But the question, though, is this: how many times will a person be ticketed for this, for having a joint? Is this a question where you could be ticketed every week, and every time you have a joint, you just pay your $250, and then you just go ahead and proceed every week? Or, again, do we want, in the Bahamas, do we want to be able to produce a system where you have to do a course, or you have to do counseling, or you have to do addiction training? Do we want to add something to this, again, to the component? Because if you are an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, and you are smoking a joint every, and we're not talking for sacramental purposes, but we're talking of recreation purposes, do we want to have a situation where you have counseling that's added to this, or you have addiction prevention that's added to it as well? So again, you are decriminalizing it. That's no difficulty. We 100% support you on that. But do we also want to add to that, and be able to assist folks who are struggling with this? There may be some folks who are addicted and would like to stop. So the same way how you have Alcoholics Anonymous, you may have to have this some addiction training, again, at the same level or the same point that you are doing this as well. So, Mr. Deputy, those, I believe, are the points on this side. We on this side support this legislation. There are some issues that obviously some issues that we have with respect to some points with respect to the legislation, but they don't go that would deal with our support for the legislation. It is 100% something that those of us on this side agree with. We agree with the medical cannabis. We would like to see a guaranteed Bahamian, fully owned industry, and with non-Bahamians or investors to be the exception. That's what we would like to see. But on those of us on this side, again, Mr. Deputy, we support this legislation. Again, we support the government with respect to moving this piece of legislation. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Freetown.